What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Break the Cycle podcast. I'm your host, Abe, and this is your other lovely host.
Jenny.
And this episode today is going to be called Allow Us to Reintroduce Ourselves. I know we've done other episodes before. Um, Jen's done a couple by herself, I did a couple by myself, and we've kind of just been like throwing spaghetti at the wall trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've never done a podcast before.
Yeah. So
so we're just trying to give whatever value we can, but also just make it very personal, make it very chill. Let you guys into like I don't know who we are as people, because sometimes on Instagram and like TikTok, like you don't really get to see the personality of someone.
yeah.
And I feel like this kind of I don't know.
I love it. I love it. So, in this episode, we're really going to get down and dirty into who we are, kind of. This is going to be one of 3 parts, so stay tuned for the other 2 parts. Little teaser there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is going to be really big. I'm super excited to do this one because we get to reintroduce what we're trying to do with this podcast. And what can you tell us about that, honey?
Well, I guess we should start with what does break the cycle mean? And I know we've done this together and it still kind of means the same thing, but I think there's so much more to it now.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been, as we've gone along with break the cycle, like more has been built upon it. And yeah, I mean, with everything happening, I mean, we're still young.
Yeah.
There's so much happening in our lives in the future. And we really want to build like our lives on these values and stuff. So it's just something we want to share with the world.
I love it. I love it. So let's just start with, what does break the cycle mean to you, hun?
Break the cycle means just breaking out of current like circles that we find ourselves in. And this goes in all parts of life. For example, when I talk about stress with clients, I'm always talking about like the environmental stress, like food stress, like actual subjective stress. So when we think about something, we have to understand that there's like so many different parts to it. And to our lives, there's like our spiritual health, our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health. There's so many different parts. And I want to break out of the cycle of all of them. Now, just because we do break the cycle doesn't mean we have broken out of the cycle of all of those, but we want to like really implement all of the strategies that we've discovered through our fitness journey to all parts of our lives.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it right on the head with that one.
On the nail.
On the nail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it in really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we're really trying to do with break the cycle, is really not just because we haven't completely broken out of the cycle either. We're still breaking and learning and finding new thresholds for things like that.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we initially started with was our exercise.
Yeah, I would say that was my biggest, like the thing that broke me out. Like, you know how when people talk about the Matrix?
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like just learning about health and like food and like the things that are in food and processed foods, I think that helped me a little bit break out of the Matrix, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because then you started seeing like, oh, what is this stuff that is actually in our food? And then you start realizing like, okay, maybe in small amounts it isn't the worst stuff, but in small amounts over time, without you doing anything to counteract that stuff, it really, really starts to add up.
Well,
and then and we don't even know that, it's not stuff that we're taught in school. Like there's no professor or anyone talking about this too often. It's not a very popular subject.
It's true. And it's I was thinking about this the other day, how like being in a lower socioeconomic status will actually like you're more likely to have more disease or less opportunity to have appropriate nutrients into your diet.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense because when I was younger, I like my mom, either we hardly ever went out. Like if we went to McDonald's, it was like, oh my God, yes, we get to go to McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's.
But she would make food at home and it would be like what she can make because she's working all day. She doesn't have time to like do all of that. And like just the availability of funds. And it was like, a protein, which she taught me a lot. My mom taught me so much about the way that I eat today. But we would have a protein and then a carb like frijoles or algo así.
Yeah, I like it. No, I like the Spanglish too.
So yeah, like that's truly, it's, yeah. I forgot. We were off topic, but it's
A little bit.
okay. It's okay.
No, yeah, it was just,
Yeah.
what break the cycle meant for us, and it's really good because a lot of this stuff we learned as we're kids. We learned as kids, so as adults we start seeing how bad some of the stuff we're doing as kids. And it's not that our parents were like bad parents, it's just that
Yeah.
they didn't know either.
Yeah.
So we found out that it's like our job to teach our kids and to teach other people as well that this is what we're put into just because of like socioeconomic stuff. Just even being a certain ethnic race will your chances of catching a certain disease are a lot higher and stuff like that. And that's stuff that's not really talked about. So that's one of the things that break the cycle is doing, is we're trying to teach people about this stuff, because you get caught in a loop, and then it's not just you caught in the loop. Now it's the future generations of our kids, their kids, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's what we're willing to spend our time and money on. At the end of the day, every decision is going to be based either on time or money.
Yep.
And a lot of it, one of the two main things on to why people can't start is usually either time or money, right? And you can do it on the budget. You can do it like just doing the basics. Like I always tell people, like, just start with the basics, because sometimes we just go like paralysis analysis and try to do so much, but it's like, hey, like it's so much simpler.
Yep.
And that's what I want to like talk about, like with fitness and nutrition at least. And I'm trying to apply it to every single part of our lives, our marriage, and just start with the basics.
Yeah, I like it. Start with the basics.
Yeah,
so that's what break the cycle is really all
At
about.
the end of the day,
it's just starting from square one, learning how to take one step away from the couch as a child,
Yep.
Yeah. One of the other things we've been trying to do lately, and we've been incorporating slowly, is faith into our coaching. And tell us a little bit about that, honey.
I think so as I started my walk with God, one of the things that I realized was that Jesus doesn't guarantee us an easy life. Like after we got baptized, oh my God, did all like the things come up? Like it was like the bubbles came to the surface in our lives. Like everything was like, it was brought to our attention. So it's never easy. Like he never promises us an easy life. He promises us long suffering, right? Yep. And like, it's so crazy because when I first started to train, like before, like it would be so hard to get through a workout. And then I remember when I would do like burpees, like 3 sets of 15, I remember like getting to number 5 on the first set and like thinking, I want to quit. Yep. I want to quit. But then like, okay, you can do one more. You can do one more. And then I would end up doing the 3x15. I'd be gassed out. But I'd be like, wow, I did that. So the more and more that I proved to myself that I could do something like that, or something hard, like a hard exercise, everything was hard for me. Body weight squats, like everything was so difficult. I remember I would be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. Yeah. And that's kind of the same of what I have felt throughout my journey and my walk with God, is like, I can get through this. But now I have the promise of the Lord, like of Jesus, of like what he has given us. And that I joyfully go through the suffering. It's hard. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm still breathing freaking hard. Like in exercises, you're still breathing hard. But for example, like the way that I translate it is like when we're doing workouts and we're like, okay, this is going to be a hard rep. And we start to like use our breath really, really intentionally. It's kind of like that. But our breath is Jesus. Yeah. And he shows us how to like intentionally, like not use him, but bring him into what we're doing. And so I just found so much like linking together of our fitness journey and our walk with God, and having to endure and persevere through the trials. Yeah. So I think that's...
Yeah, I think because like regardless of what walk of faith anyone decides to take, we all think that we start doing the meditations, the mantras, the whatever, the prayers, the baptism,
the self-affirmations.
Yeah, and then we think that because we do all this stuff that the suffering is going to stop. It's like, no, dude, like this stuff is actually teaching you how to suffer with grace. You know what I'm saying? And that's what Jesus and God does. He doesn't take the suffering away, as he teaches you how to endure through the suffering and actually continue to persevere. But at the same time, it's like he's the antidote, because in Matthew, he says, come to me, you who are weary, for my burden is light.
That's my
You know what I'm saying?
favorite.
It's my favorite verse of all. I get chills just
Every
saying
time
it.
I'm so tired, I'm like exhausted driving
Yep.
home from work or something like that. Like I'm like exhausted, and all I think to myself is that verse is like, "Come
Yeah.
to me, those who are weary." When I'm just like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
life
those
has
who are
beat me
weary
up."
and those who are weary and heavy burdened, because his burden is light, and he can take that from you.
Yeah,
and I love that, because
Yep.
nowhere else does anyone else offer to take the burden from you like Jesus does.
Yeah. We tend to carry everything on our shoulders, and then we can just give it to him.
Yeah. And he asks for it.
Him. Yeah,
he asks for it. He's like, just give it to me.
You just have to be willing to like be like, okay, I trust you. And then you're like, I don't know the answer to what I like. He doesn't give you the answers. He's just like, here, give it to me and do what you're doing. Just keep on doing.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. So
what's next, honey?
We want to, so with this podcast, we really want to talk to others and their stories, because there has been people that we've like encountered, coached, that like we hear their stories either about faith, about fitness, about something that we've gotten to witness, and it's just a beautiful miracle. So that's our goal, is to bring on other stories, just to like talk about like what they persevered through, and just like the changes that what we talked about, like the break the cycle, all parts of your life, how implementing something like that can really impact like those things like in a personal way.
Yeah, because it's not just enough for us to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can talk about everything that we've been through, but sometimes you can't relate to us, but there's other people that we know that you might be able to relate to, and we want to talk to them too, because their story is so valuable. And like sometimes when I hear stuff like from our friends that we've met, like some of like our mentors that we've known, like I get chills hearing their stories, because some of them come from drug addiction and stuff like that, and they've hit like injuries, and they've hit like their version of rock bottom, and continued to persevere and overcome those situations. And
so like in a way, testimonies as well. And it's crazy how much like physical fitness and like even nutrition can be so like closely related, and we don't want to spoil anything, but like nutrition, how it's like, for example, for me, anxiety was one of the biggest things that I got rid of as a result of nutrition, and then obviously God, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we're going to start doing more, is including more people into our podcast, more testimonials and stuff like that. Hopefully have some guests, fingers crossed. But our mission for this podcast is to expose families to the act of breaking the cycle and breaking through these barriers through fitness, nutrition, and, you know, most importantly, faith. Because you can have all the other areas of your life, but if you don't have faith, you're missing out big time. And for those of you who do not believe in faith, trust me, you take faith every day you walk out the door, because you don't know whether or not you're gonna crash. You don't know whether or not the guy who hands you the pills at the freaking CVS pharmacy is actually giving you real drugs. You don't know, dude. You take a leap of faith every extreme time, you know. But you take a leap of faith every time you walk out the door. You know? And
faith in something, and anchoring yourself. I feel like anchoring yourself, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so our vision, so like, don't judge us. We're like literally just trying to, we've been like brainstorming this and just really like, what do we want to see from Break the Cycle? Because it's not just coaching, because at this time we are not taking anyone, but we want to just give as much value, which is the purpose of this podcast. Like we said in the first episode, we were called to create this podcast. We don't want to put like any sort of pressure on it. We really just want to give as much as we can. But ultimately, our vision is to create a global movement. So we realize that we have a big God. So we have to have big visions, because we have faith that God, like the reason why he's putting us into the podcast is because he's not just doing something small here. He's doing something big. So we want to create a global movement where parents or just individuals of all kinds from all walks of life come together to experience a deeper change and a change in the trajectory of their life. And we see these families incorporating fitness and nutrition as a part of their everyday lives without obsessing and anchoring their faith in everything that they do. So ultimately, it's for the world to be empowered to pursue their greatest dreams, nurture their bodies as the temples of the spirit, and thriving in everything that they do in health, fitness, and in faith. And that's something that really like has inspired us and really anchored us to this mission. This mission has been since last year, so it's already on a year. And we don't really know where it's headed, but this is the first step. So faith.
Yeah, we're just listening. At this point, we're honestly just listening to the Lord and what He's called us to do. And before we started re-recording podcasts and stuff like that, Jen was saying that the Lord talked to her and He's like, "Hey, dude, like you got to be vocal."
Oh yeah.
And then like it's the same with me.
For months.
Yeah, He's been telling us for a while, and it's just like one of those things. It's like we have to be obedient to the call that we're getting, because otherwise we never know where it's gonna get us to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because going back to what we said earlier, there's people that do paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to figure out, because He would bring this podcast to me and all of my prayers and all of like just everything. And I remember I was like, well, I don't know what to talk about. I don't really know, like, because I was like, I don't know if you're, because I asked Him to take my company or my passion away in order, like, I wanted to see what it is that He wanted me to do, and I really wanted to put up my cross, right? And this has been ongoing, the podcast, not necessarily coaching, but the podcast. And I'm like, all right. And then one Sunday, was it Sunday?
It was Monday.
I don't know. It was a Monday, and we were like, I told him, were we in prayer? I don't know what we were doing. Were we reading?
Yeah, you were in prayer. I was handling some stuff here at the office, and then from one moment to the next, I stopped dialing. I'm doing phone calls here at the house, and then I go check on Jen, and then Jen's like curling her hair up, like getting all her stuff. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, we're recording the podcast today.
Yeah.
Dude.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. I was reading the Bible that morning, and I was like, God kept, and I remember the week before I prayed a prayer where I was like, Holy Spirit, like, please just show me, like, when you're talking to me, because I'm not sure, like, make it very clear. And that morning I got the message from the Holy Spirit, and I just like ignored it as one of my own thoughts. And then like it came back and said, like, this is what I'm talking about, you're not listening. And I was like, I was like, okay. Like, so I literally closed my stuff, put on like a sermon so I can curl my hair, because it's my God day. And I was like, hey, we're doing the podcast at like 12 or 2 or whatever.
Yeah. And just know, whenever you hear that voice in your head that doesn't sound like you, that's the Lord. That is the positivity talking right there. Yeah. That is the push. If it sounds like you, it's probably the enemy. Just letting you know. It's not. If it doesn't sound like you, it is God speaking to you, and you need to act on it. And that's one of the things that we're learning to do is act in obedience when the Lord calls us to do things, because those who are obedient find the abundance in the Lord. And that's just it. You just have to obey. And it's one of the toughest things, because we've been taught to rebel as a society. Yeah. So I think this is a good way to leave this off on. Is there anything else?
Yeah, because there was a part to our vision that I forgot to put, and it says, we aspire to inspire lasting change that survives through generations and fosters a legacy of vibrant well-being and unwavering faith. And I think that's where we'll end it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.